We sing hallelujah, and we lift your name high, God. We thank you for the gift that we celebrate this season in your Son Jesus. The peace has come to earth. It's in his name we pray. Amen. Well, it's good to be with you. Do you understand how intimidating it is to walk into a moment in the wake of something like that and then just be here to let you down? Like, like that is like, good gracious. Man, powerful time of worship, of just getting to lift Jesus high and celebrate what this Christmas season is all about. And that's what we've been gathering around, is this idea of Jesus and heavenly peace and how peace came to earth in and through the narrative of Christ. And we've looked at that in a number of focused manners. One, we've looked at it through the lens of, hey, how do we find peace with God? And like we be at peace with him, and then him be at peace with us. And we're even going to expound upon a lot of those principles even today. And then last week, Pastor Tim knocked it out of the park talking about, okay, well, what then does it look like to be peacemakers and to be actively pursuing peace in our lives? And we've looked at both the Old and New Testament and the concepts of peace. And in the Old Testament, shalom being the Hebrew word there in view, and in the New, irene is the Greek in the New Testament. And we'll be looking further at those as well, and how these concepts are so much more dense and rich than our modern context and westernized reality of peace is. It's much more than just coming to peaceable terms with two feuding parties or anything of the like. It's greater. It's finding completeness and wholeness. And really, today we're going to do something that I'm excited about. I've definitely been blessed by in just preparing this message, is that we're going to look at a number of prophetic texts in the Old Testament foretelling the coming Messiah in and through the birth of Jesus. And there's just, if you haven't ever done a study therein, if you're looking for something to bolster your faith, like when moments of doubt or something creep in, this is where it's at. I'm going to tell you right now, at least for me, this is where I go to anytime something like that happens. And a big part of the heartbeat there and this whole series is the idea that chaos is apparent, it is present, it is constant in our world, in our lives. One thing we'll talk about as well is the idea that, sometimes you got family members and you wake up and you go, you chose chaos, that's on you, right? But at the same time, a lot of times, if not most of the times, chaos just chooses you, whether you want it or not. And listen, you didn't want it, but it found you, right? And so how do we, in the wake of that, and in a context of just brokenness and issues and pain and chaos, especially in a season that's supposed to be characterized by peace, but for some reason is more characteristic chaos, how do we find peace in the face of all that? And what does it mean in Scripture and even in the narrative around Christmas as peace shows up so repetitiously? Even since last I was with you 2 weeks ago, I've experienced this fully and completely in the worst ways possible, okay? It's full spectrum of different terrible, chaotic things. I joked last time I was with you, so 2 weeks ago I told you, I said, hey, some of you, what's going to happen is that one person in your house is going to get sick, and then you're going to bounce around. The next day, okay? The next day, Taylor wakes up, she's like, oh, and I'm like, ah! Like it's coming for us, okay? Now, here's the deal. I told you the worst thing is when one person gets sick and they just ping-pong it around. We found something worse. What is worse is when both parents go down and somehow the kids get stronger. Like, how does that even, they went Super Saiyan for a whole week, and they just were coming at us, and we were just like tag team WWE zombies trying to get at us, just like, yes, here we go, okay, and trying to deal with these gremlins, and it did not work. It was a bad week, I'm gonna be honest with you. We were like, Lord, you're our peace, but also, it was just not a good situation. We finally got better. And we found ourselves at an event that was on the backside, and timing how that we could that illness could have held out a couple more days. We made it this event. It was a Christmas princess party, is what it was. It was a community-wide event. All these kind of little girls and moms and all coming together, and me and two other dads who didn't get the memo that we did not have to be there. I looked at them, they were like, yeah, we screwed up. And so we showed up at this thing. what was the funniest part of this whole thing? So it's like all these Disney princesses, but they're like, and Santa's gonna be here. And he sat in the back alone. Nobody wanted to go see Santa. They were like, princess. And so one of my children, my feral one, middle child, hello, she in the middle of like the whole princess gathering where all the girls are in the front of the room, she goes to the back of this like mini auditorium and just like sprints. I'm like, checks out. And so I go, I peel off and I'm gonna go watch her. And I'm like, hey, sweetheart, look, Santa's back there. He's all alone. You wanna go see Santa? Like, so we go up and talk to him and all that kind of stuff. She tells him she wants mac and cheese for Christmas and the like. Somebody gave her $10 as a gift for her birthday, which is close to Christmas. He said, sweetheart, what do you want to get for Christmas? She goes, I want to buy mac and cheese. And Taylor said, don't tell her otherwise. It'll help on the grocery bill. We'll get it for her. But we're sitting there in the back. She sees Santa, and then she begins to walk across the back of the room. And in the other corner of the back of the room was this huge, elaborate, like, display that they had put on as a photo op after kind of the events proceedings got rolling, where the princesses would go to the back of the room and take a picture. Well, my daughter is part Bobcat, and so she like comes at anything with physicality. That's her love language. She wants to hug. She wants to embrace. She's all about it. And so there's a life-size Olaf stuffed animal, and she decides she's going to form tackle that thing in the back of this room. And so she goes at it, hugs it, and a chain of events domino effect occurs where she hits the thing behind Olaf, and the whole display comes crashing down in the back. And as I turn, because I'm standing right next to it, to look at the onlooking crowd who turns in sheer horror, I look back and realize my daughter has blitzed to make me take the fall. Like, she is nowhere to be found. She is gone. Everyone assumes I've just been like, this is what I think about it. I just like kicked this thing down. So much so that someone who goes to our church, who was sitting next to my wife, leaned over and goes, yeah, that was Seth. Like, it was just immediate blame, okay? Chaos. Absolute ridiculous. And there was no moment I was like, oh, Seth. Okay. It was just me at that point. After that, we thought it'd be a good idea to go look at lights. It wasn't. And we got everybody in the car, all the girls. I don't know if you know this. Edwardsville has a thing you can go to, and I'm going to add traffic to this. You go do this, all right? It will be underwhelming. They have this website where you can go and see the houses that are geotagged as what you need to go see for Christmas lights. And we're we're going to do this. It links to your Google Maps, and you can just go around. I realized, though, after the fact, that anyone can put their house on there, and they don't vet them. They don't go, hey, how much is a quality of enough house lighting situation to justify you being on the tour of homes? They must not do it, because there was houses we showed up at, and 3 doors down, we were like, that was 10 times better. They just had 2 inflatables, and it was more than you. It was, and so the girls were not super engaged. They started breaking down. The baby's crying. It is just tumultuous. It's supposed to be the sweet evening. We're listening to Christmas music. It didn't happen, and I turned to my wife, not even thinking about this series, and I said very sardonically, man, this is so peaceful. This is great. This is good. And she looked at me and said very conversationally, she wasn't meaning to Jesus juke the situation at the moment at all. She was being very sincere and real, because we've had conversations around this because of other tensions that we've been walking through, even with family members' health and getting good news there and also getting bad news there and all kinds of stuff. And she looked at me and she said, Seth, our lives, they don't look very peaceful these days, but we get to choose whether or not we're going to have peace in our hearts. And as much as that is this on-the-nose thing of of course, you should probably say, that's an ideal thing to say. It's incredibly true. Yes, there was all kinds of craziness that happens. But ironically enough, when I look back on those moments, do you think I feel a whole lot of tension, or do you think I look at those fond moments? That I got to sit there with my daughters and make a little snowflake craft, or that we did get to see some different lights and point them out and be like, it's the Grinch, and just all kinds of stuff, right? It's those moments. And it's, what am I going to choose to focus on? What am I going to reflect on, and what am I going to choose to have peace in or not? And the beauty is for us, as we're going to see today, is that peace is not something that is wholly reliant on us, thankfully. Quite frankly, we're incapable of it on our own. But what we're going to see is through the power and person and significance of the gift of Christ, our completeness, our wholeness, our peace can in fact be found, and we can walk in it in any situation if we choose to. With that in mind, I want to read you Isaiah 9:6, which has really been our theme verse, speaking to really the understanding of Jesus as the Prince of Peace, or the Prince of Shalom. It says, for a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Shalom. It's difficult at times this season. I mean, obviously there's laughable, ridiculous things, and I'm willing to bet if I went around the room right now, any number of you could tell any number of stream of consciousness, similar to my own of this past week, of how just chaos and crazy things have occurred. I'm willing to bet you could take it further as well, and you could point out to me people that you care about deeply who are either struggling through something incredibly difficult or who are dealing with incredible amounts of overwhelming sickness and illness, of which we are no exception. And as I said, sometimes you get good news with that and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get a freaking stream of consciousness of bad news that's a little bit more than you can bear. But nonetheless, where will we find peace? Or will we choose to embrace the chaos? I'm going to tell you right now, Jesus was born into a situation that, although we paint it in very idyllic, very fanciful, beautiful settings, we do picturesque moments of like the manger and kind of glittering, sparkling stars, and we envision this ambiance. It wasn't. The setting to which Jesus was born was nothing but brokenness and chaos. And incredibly overwhelming things that people were having to faithfully walk in and trust God, even though it made no sense. You've got Mary, for example, who's sitting there and minding her own business, looking forward to the fact that she's engaged, going to marry the man she loves. And sure enough, angel appears to her and goes, hey, P.S., you're going to find yourself with child. And she goes, that's not possible. And he's like, I know. Still, it's going to happen. You're probably going to want to try to explain it to Joseph. Good luck with that. And then all the other people in your life, and make sure that you tell them it's the Messiah, and you're going to be, it's definitely not because you're sleeping around. So yay, high fives all around, Merry Christmas. And that's a pretty rough, there's any number of ladies in here who are engaged right now in our church, just statistically speaking. And so can you imagine right now, just empathize for a second with that, okay? That's incredibly overwhelming. Now, thankfully, angel appears to Joseph and goes, hey, man, I know you were planning on divorcing her silently. And when she told you that, you're going to be an upstanding guy in the way you went about it, especially kind of in view of the culture and context of what's going on. But I'm telling you, what she's saying is true. You need to walk in it. So Joseph now comes full circle and goes, you know what? Yes, we're going to walk in it. So now you understand the two sides of it. Mary's trying to tell people in her life one narrative of this. Joseph is trying to support that and they're like, dude, what are you doing? Do you understand? Do you even hear yourself? God appeared to y'all and told you that that's not you. You already have told me it's not your kid. And that's the way that's the narrative with friends, family, and people. Now, thankfully, we know, and we'll even see in one of the passages we're going to look at here in a bit, that they did have some familial support. In Mary's extended family, you see Zechariah and his wife who are visited as well and told, hey, you're going to have a son in your old age, and that's going to become John the Baptist, and he's going to be the herald of Jesus. So there's all these beautiful things happening. So they have some support, but really next to none. And then beyond that, if that isn't enough, whenever she's full-term pregnant, she and Joseph have to pack up, and they have to get on the back of a donkey, and they have to go an incredible distance because the government said, hey, we need to do a census. Now, hear me. In studying this passage, I just read through it without a whole lot of empathetic understanding of that situation until I was married and my wife went through pregnancy. A full-term lady on the back of a donkey for more than 30 seconds is too long, okay? When Taylor was full-term pregnant with our first kiddo, we had some great friends who invited us to go out to the Lake of the Ozarks and go on a boat. Now, if you haven't been to the Lake of Ozarks, it is not a tranquil pond. It is like a hurricane comes through at any given moment in the middle of our great United States. It is. You could surf on some of those waves, I'm pretty sure. And so as we're sitting there with her 9 months, bang, 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 I was like, we're going to have the baby in the Lake of Ozarks. That's what it's going to be, a water birth. It is going to happen right here, right now, all right? So can you imagine, that was a concentrated small amount of time, and can you imagine on a donkey for miles and miles and hours and hours? Now hear me, if that wasn't bad enough, and Mary's going, hey Joseph, I'm going to have the baby on a donkey. Not my idyllic situation, okay? But in her, just like you and I imagine she did what we do. She goes, but at the end of the night, I will at least be off this donkey, and I'll be in a warm bed, and we can just be done with this whole thing, okay? And we can put the past behind us. So they show up to the inn, and they're like, hey, there's no room. Real sorry about that. Everybody's in town for the census. You're a little bit late. That's on you, I guess, probably. But nonetheless, here's the deal. And, hey, you remember what? Don't you say donkey to me. That's what the mayor's like, don't you say donkey. Hey, you remember where you parked that donkey? You remember where, like, you could stay with the donkey. Like, you could do that tonight. Like, that's okay. Like, go to the manger. Just sit there with him. You've already hung out. Y'all real close. Maybe just be there. And also have the baby with the donkey. Like, what? Like, she has to go into a manger. Then she goes into labor and has this baby in a barn, okay? Not quite. Like, Merry Christmas to you. There's the Christmas narrative to you all. Goodbye. Like, right? Like, that's the setting. And if that wasn't enough, when you fast forward time in the first year or two of Jesus's living there in the area, you have the wise men that show up down the road. I mess with you every year about this. They didn't show up with the shepherds. They didn't show up on the night. There was no gleaming star when Jesus was born. It was later. It's just in the Bible. I'm sorry, nursery rhymes lied to you, okay? So like 2 years later, roundabouts, wise men show up. They are following a star at that point. And they show up, and the rulers of the time are very intrigued by this idea of this Messiah and this King of the Jews. And Herod is, in his later years, he's really losing his mind to a certain degree, and he's incredibly paranoid. And so when the wise men come to him, these magi, and they're interacting with him, he goes, look, go, worship him, bring gifts to him, but come back and tell me where he is, because I want to worship him too. All the while going, actually, I'm going to go kill him. So they told Herod roughly the time in which the star had shown up and all this to kind of give the idea of where to go and how old the child was. And so they go. Angel of the Lord appears to them, goes, hey, Herod is not your friend. You got to get out of Dodge, okay? And when they do that, they leave. However, because of what they told him, he was able to extrapolate what he believed to be the rough age of the child. And so Herod decides that what he's going to do is take every firstborn male, 2 years of age and younger in this vicinity of Bethlehem, and just kill them all. So the thing that we overlook is also with the ushering in of Jesus' coming was genocide. So and I could keep going. Like the setting in which he was born was not, by our measurable standard, anything peaceable. It was tumultuous. It was brokenness. It was families and mothers weeping at the loss of their children. It was all kinds of terrible things. And yet, the fulfillment of some grand narrative that had been written for thousands of years was coming to fruition. And the world, whether it realized it or not, was trying to fight back at that. Because the world does one thing for us. It always tries to destroy our shalom and our completeness and our peace. When shalom and that concept of irene, and I said that there really are a bigger understanding, when those are at their fullest and they culminate in their biblical understanding, what's occurring is that there's a spiritual harmony that's brought about. And it brings restoration with individuals and God. And that's so much of what we looked at a couple of weeks ago. And what I really want to do is take that which we talked about then and just give you really some things to just sit with and hopefully be blessed by in the assurance of your faith. And maybe if you don't have faith and you're just, exploring that, you can see that there is incredible validity to the reality of who Jesus is and what he came to do. So with that in mind, I want to read to you John 14:27, which is Jesus' own words that speak to this idea that the peace he brings is greater than we understand. It's a passage we read that week as well. John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. It's not what the world gives and understands. So don't let your heart be troubled or fearful. Isaiah 48:17 is the prophetic literature that I'm going to look through with you. Now, we're going to look at 3 of these in succession. 2 from Isaiah, 1 from Zechariah. But the first of which is significant because this idea of shalom is incredibly regular in its appearance within prophetic literature. Because shalom, completeness, wholeness, is the end goal of the Messiah coming, that we will now be made whole where we were missing things we were not complete prior to. However, what's going to happen in Isaiah 48 is there's going to be a declaration by God over the people of God in the Old Testament in the idea that shalom has been broken. that peace is broken. And it's because of the fact that they've pursued foreign gods and idols. They haven't submitted themselves to the Lord. They have only given a portion of themselves, not all of themselves. And there's even going to be a retrospective on the original terms of the Abrahamic covenant that God said to Abraham, like, you and your descendants will be as a multitude of the sands of the sea and the grains of it. Like, all this is in view. And there's almost going to be a taking back of that rhetoric because of what has been done by God's people. Isaiah 48:17. This is what the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel says. I am the Lord, your God, who teaches you for your benefit, who leads you in the way you should go. If only you had paid attention to my commands, then your peace, your shalom, would have been like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. Your descendants would have been as countless as the sand, and the offspring of your body like its grain. So there's that retrospective on the covenant with Abraham. Their name would not be cut off or eliminated from my presence. So a declaration of shalom and its brokenness. And hear me, each instance of shalom being broken ushers in a need for it to be resolved in some way. And what we're going to see here in a second is that although we try to resolve our incompleteness all the time with any number of things in this world, relationships, family, that's the like positive-ish side, all the way over to like alcohol, drugs, pick anything. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. If you're putting it in a position that is reserved for the divinity of God, then the answer is it's a problem. And it is not something that will offer you wholeness and completeness. And so as such, we can't do it. We cannot fabricate it. We can't accomplish it. And we see that throughout the Old Testament. We see it first show up in Genesis whenever Adam and Eve sin, and that shalom, that completeness with God is broken. And then you start to see different covenant theologies that come into effect. You see Abraham coming. He goes, look, I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people, and we're going to walk in this. If you do this, I'll make you as the grains of sand. And it goes in Isaiah, goes, you didn't do it. You broke it again. You keep breaking it. So God has to send in and institute a new covenant that's going to happen, one that we are even incapable of screwing up, thank the Lord, in and through this prophesied Messiah, this one who's going to come in and through, as we're going to see, the person of Jesus. And speaking to that, Zechariah says this in chapter 9, verse 9, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, humble, and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. This is prophetic literature surrounding the idea of Palm Sunday and him coming in on the donkey right there. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The bow of war will be removed, and he will proclaim peace, shalom to the nations. His dominion will extend from sea to sea and from the Euphrates River to the ends of the earth. So he's the one that's coming. And he will extend wholeness and completeness and peace to the nations. Back in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, it says, I form light, and this is God speaking of himself, and create darkness. I make well-being, and that word for well-being in Hebrew is shalom, and create calamity. I am the Lord who does all these things. So we recognize, one, that we break shalom, that we break peace with God. We do that. We recognize that he has a plan to restore that. And there in Isaiah, again, we see that he has power over that and can, in fact, institute those things in his sovereignty and his great power. So the thing I want you to glean as we begin to traverse this text is this. We can and do undermine our ability to be at peace with God. And only God can reestablish that peace. You can't. I can't. And what we're going to see in the text in a minute, when we go to Luke 2 and look at the narrative surrounding the birth of Jesus, you will see that there's a very clear reason for that. And that's because peace isn't here. It does not exist in our world in a way that can give us wholeness and completeness. It does not. It had to be sent to us, as we will see here in a second. So let's then look there to Luke 2. So if God does establish peace in our lives, how does he do it? It's beautifully laid out in Luke 2, and I choose this passage in particular because of the rhetoric around peace. Specifically, this is going to be the one where the angels appear to the shepherds and talk about the idea that they need to go check out this Messiah, this king. So Luke 2:8. In the same region, shepherds were staying out in the fields and keeping watch at night over their flock. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. Now, I want to pause there. I always like to pause and point out to you things when we kind of stereotypically or traditionally misframe Scripture and don't really put it in a biblical manner because of just traditionalistic things. Our understanding and the way we portray angels is so incredibly off. And it comes from a good place. Like, hear me, if you've got an image of an angel that doesn't align with this in your home, I'm not saying that you're just like off by any means or something like that. I'm just saying culture and context has shaped that, right? To be clear, biblically speaking, angels are not blonde-haired, blue-eyed ladies in bed sheets with wings. That's not a biblical understanding of it. They are also not chubby babies with curly Q Shirley Temple hair and tiny wings and little heart bows and diapers. That is not also an angel. You know that one? I had that one in my house growing up with the two that are like this over the cloud. Anybody with me? Right, like that whole deal? Not what's talking about. Anytime you see an angelic presence, it is this divine, just overwhelming, transcendent entity that is reflecting the power and presence of God at people. And when they show up, people are like, what is happening? We about to die. Like, that's like that. There's no other reaction. They don't go, this is nice. Like, it's not it, okay? They go, thank the Lord, I'm wearing brown robes because I'd have to change them otherwise, all right? Like, this is not a good situation, okay? They are terrified. They think they're going to lose their life. So every time, we even talked about it 2 weeks ago when Jesus shows up after he resurrected and he steps into the room with the disciples, the first thing he has to say is, peace be with you, because they're like, ah! Like, anytime they have to give this declaration of calm down, I'm not going to kill you, as they're about to do right now. So they're terrified. 10, but the angel said to them, don't be afraid, for look, I proclaim to you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today, in the city of David, a Savior was born for you, who is the Messiah, the Lord. Now, I love that right there, it just starts out the gate of saying, a Savior is born for you, who is the Messiah. Because it's not like this building narrative of like later in the Gospels, they're going to be like, oh, P.S., also this guy has been fulfilling all these prophecies of the Messiah. Like, out the gates, they're like, he's the Messiah. Like, he's it. He's God. The Messiah, Lord. Like, both and. To be clear, he's the Messiah. He's also the Lord. That's who this baby is, okay? This will be the sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped tightly in cloth and lying in a manger. Do you understand also right there the just interwoven nature of God? And what we see in part, he knows in full. In that when Mary's sitting there going, man, this is nuts. Why are we got to be in this manger? What is going on? How difficult would it have been in a census time where just an incredible amount of people have come into this town to be there for a census? All of the rooms are filled up. How easy would it have been to find a baby and a husband and wife in a hotel room? The answer is pretty impossible, okay? Pretty quick. Good GPS mapping by God when you say the manger, right? You just got to check a few of those mangers. Probably not going to run into a whole lot of babies and moms and dads, right? Fresh out the oven, okay? Like it's he's right there, all right? And so in that, you've got them going and seeing this, getting declaration, and they sure enough are going to find the baby. You'll find him wrapped and lying in a manger. Now, this is where we get into the peace part that's so incredibly powerful. It is one that we just look at when we read this text, but we don't actually highlight the significance of the praise and worship by the angelic host right here. So in 13, suddenly there was a multitude of the heavenly host with the angel praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven and peace on earth to people he favors. The statement here is that the glory is on high in heaven, and now finally peace has come to earth. There's a reason you couldn't find peace. It's because it wasn't here. Peace came to earth in the form of a baby, in the form of Jesus, and wholeness and completeness could only be found in and through that reality and that manifestation. And they are praising and singing his glory for it, as we'll do in a few minutes. When the angels had left them and returned to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go straight to Bethlehem and see what has happened, which the Lord has made known to us. See, and this is a pretty straightforward, obvious statement to make in light of this, but I've got to make it nonetheless. It's that God reestablishes peace through the birth of Jesus. Heaven has come to earth. Peace has been sent down. The fulfillment of everything that was has come, and we celebrate. The angelic host celebrates. And we should too. Now, the reason I tell you that so much of this is tied to really a way in which my own faith is undergirded, and whenever I have doubt or things that seep in and all that, just like any of the rest of us do, these are the things I turn to. It's the prophecies of Jesus, as incredibly strange as that might sound, to be the thing that really supports my faith. And I've talked about this numerous times, but I'll continue to do so. We're talking 300 plus prophecies over the course of the entire Old Testament. This is over hundreds and hundreds of years, numerous different authors. And they are all telling this unified narrative of this coming Messiah. And every single one of these 300 plus prophecies are fulfilled in and through the person of Jesus Christ as revealed throughout the New Testament. Now, you might say, Seth, if you're a person who is inquisitive and asking questions, which hear me, I want to be clear about something. And I saw this, I was watching something the other day, and it was a declaration against the way we posture things as kind of evangelical, westernized religion, whatever. Asking questions and being inquisitive is okay. There's nothing wrong with going, I don't understand this. You know how many questions Jesus got answered? How many people did he just shoot down and tell them, like, well, it's just what we believe, so how about you just tighten up and get in line? Like, that's not how it works. So, like, if you got questions today, you're in a safe spot. You can ask questions, okay? So with that, let me tell you, you might be going, Seth, but hear me, 300 plus Old Testament, yeah, they could just get the text and just line it up and write it however they want. Yes, maybe, if it wasn't for some pretty obvious historical realities. Namely that while you and I sit here and think of that in terms that make sense to us because we have this complete text that we have in the Bible, they did not have that even in the Old Testament, even in the Torah and all. Like, they didn't have like a copy of the Torah on their mantle, okay? Like, there was no printing press. There was no just common literature that people had. You've got these holy texts that are being held within their religious holy places that the priests and high priests had access to. And for all intents and purposes, could be telling them a completely different narrative than's actually there because they're just having to take their word. So in that, it would make sense maybe if that conspiracy would work if Jesus was born into a priestly family or into a family of high rapport and wealth who could get access to those types of things. It makes no sense that he'd be born to a carpenter. It also makes no sense that choosing his 12 disciples, instead of choosing key influential people in the community, he chose fishermen. He chose the people everybody hated, tax collectors. He chose all these other ones and said, these are going to be the people that I work in and through. And then when he extended it, the only educated person he ended up choosing after the fact was Paul, who had been killing Christians. So he's not picking the creme de la creme when it comes to this, all right? These people don't have access. Paul was the only one retroactively that had any access to those texts as a Pharisee. So you've got these guys are so uneducated that when they look at the book of Mark, for example, they believe that that's the account of Peter. And the reason Mark wrote it is because Peter couldn't write it. And so there is this missing piece of them being even capable of it. So you've got a carpenter somehow with a bunch of uneducated people pulled off the single greatest conspiracy in the history of mankind, or he's God. Those are your only two options. One thing I will always be for you in this space is a fork in the road. I will never be anything but. He is not a good man. He is not a great prophet. He is not whatever. He is not just generic, positive, moral platitudes spoken into the universe. He is either a charlatan, he is either a heretic and was worthy of death, or he is God manifest, and I will stand on the ladder to the day I die. It's one or the other. Now, for some of us, you might not be somebody's amen right there with me. I'm telling you, they're right there. I feel it. The text here might be something that you can get a little bit bogged down in and lost in. You might not be so much of a, learning through hearing or even reading. Some of you are visual, and I am as well. And so what I want to do, and I haven't done this before when I make that kind of a declaration, is I wanted to make a visual for you. Now, there's a lot of infographics that have been going around. One that's real powerful is one that looks at the 60,000+ cross references throughout the Old and New Testament. It's a great one. But the one I want us to focus on is those prophetic pieces. And so I want to put this up here so you can see it. This right here is a visualization of every single one of the 300 plus prophecies. The left side of the arch, all there on that baseline, on the left baseline, are all the 300 plus prophecies all throughout the New Testament. The tiny little text you can't see are the respective books of the Bible in the Old Testament to which those belong. And then that beautiful arching over is the connection point of every single one of them to the fulfillment of the passages throughout the New Testament in the respective books below. To give you some insight into what types of prophecies we're talking about that are reflected in this image, you have what the Messiah will be, the lineage of the Messiah, the need for Messiah, his character, how he will come, how he will be received, what he will say, what he will do, how others will respond, how he will redeem, and how it will end. And I hope in that visual you see the gravity of it. This is not 3 little arches. This is not 5 to 6 little arches that form this nice little, this is a dense, impactful thing that has to be given pause. And you have to come to terms with where you stand with it one way or the other. So with that in mind, I want to then ask the question of, okay, if he is in fact our shalom, our peace, the thing that is to fulfill us and give us completeness, what are we supposed to do in the wake of that? Like, what does that look like? What do we do with that? As I alluded to earlier, Zechariah is one who is a relative of Mary's. He's married to one of her cousins, and he and his wife are the ones to whom John the Baptist would be born. And so all these things are happening around the same time, right? So we just read in Luke 2 was the birth of Jesus. This is Luke 1. And so this is all the stuff leading up to it. And Zechariah has this amazing declaration about peace and the gospel that he makes in this word that he just cries out to God in the wake of all these understandings. And I want to read it to you because it's one we don't really focus on a lot. Luke 1:78 says this. It says, because of our God's merciful compassion, the dawn from on high will visit us. From on high will come to here, to shine on those who live in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace, into the way of Irene. To guide our feet in the way of peace. Now, this gave me pause when I saw this, and I always try to point this out to you. When Scripture self-supports and speaks to and validates things, it's of grave significance. This is almost directly quoted later in Ephesians, okay? In one of the single most popular, impactful passages in the Bible, and that's the passage on the armor of God, where we see that when we walk into this life, when we walk into the chaos of what's going on around us, and we want to find peace, God has given us the equipment to approach it. You've got the helmet of salvation. You've got the sword of the Spirit, the blessed of righteousness, like all these things. But one that I want to point out to you is what is spoken to in Ephesians 6:15. So for reference, again, Zechariah, back in Luke 1, says, to guide our feet into the way of peace. Later, Paul says this, and your feet sandaled with the readiness for the gospel of peace. So we see this pre-Jesus spoken of. We see it post-Jesus validated. And this is all New Testament. This ain't even a part of the arch, okay? This is something else entirely. When we look at this statement on this peace, this completeness, and this gospel of peace, this gospel of fulfillment and completeness that's coming into effect. And so what we see here, it's incredibly beautiful, is the idea that the gospel is not this static place of blissful completeness. Yes, if you step in a relationship with Jesus, you will and should experience an overwhelming, beautiful, fulfilling reality. But the intentional thing is what follows. What will you do with it? Because this peace is not static. It does not remain in place. It is active. It is sandaled up. It is walking out, and it's on mission. See, the gospel of peace is not a state of static bliss, but a mission that catalyzes us out of our comfort zone to make others whole. Early this next year, we'll be doing a whole series on comfort zones and how you don't need to have those anymore. And how that's one that we walk in faithful willingness and submission to the Lord and say, you know what? It's not enough for me to just sit in this anymore. I'm thankful for what you've done for me, Jesus. But you've got the answer, friend. And others are still searching for it on this earth. And you know it's nowhere to be found because you found it. And it came from heaven to earth. So the final question I have for you as we wrap things up is this. Will you choose peace or chaos this Christmas? What does that look like for you? For some of us and for some of you, this may be the first time you've engaged with church in an incredibly long time. Just, even statistically speaking there's, Christmas and Easter are the times that people typically are like, I'll give this a shot. I'll see if, what this whole God thing's about. I've tried it a few times. Whatever, I'm going to give it a go. Can I just say something to you? And I know that this is obviously, in what I do, I'm the one who's going to say this, but I really mean it. Jesus loves you. As hokey as that might sound coming from me. And he's got a plan for you, a plan to prosper you and not to harm you, a plan for a hope and a future, because he sees what is broken in you. He knows you've tried everything else. He knows it doesn't work, and he wants to make you whole. He wants to be your shalom, your peace. So maybe the thing you need to choose this Christmas is Jesus, just period. For others of us, maybe you've been walking in this faith thing, but all those chaotic things I've described have really been surmounting in such a way that you're finding it incredibly difficult to lean into and rely on him and acknowledge him as your peace. And you are giving way too much credence to those other things and worshiping them inadvertently with your time, attention, and affections. Give those up. Do not choose chaos. Choose something greater. Romans 5:1 speaks this. It says, therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace, completeness with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. In verse 8 it says, but God proves his own love to us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And if that wasn't enough, and it wasn't clear enough when it says when we were still sinners, in verse 10 it says, for if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, then how much more, having been reconciled, will we be saved by his life? He wants to be your peace. He knows what you're going through. And he wants to make you whole. So finally, this is what I got for you. Choosing peace, simply put, just means choosing Jesus. You can't choose anything else. It's not in this world. Never was. It came down 2,000 plus years ago in the form of a tiny baby in a manger. A little boy to grow up, live a perfect life, to be condemned and crucified for crimes he did not commit, and to through his own volition and power walk out of the grave 3 days later and then ascend to God where he sits at the right hand of the Father and is coming back for us. So let's focus on that this Christmas. Because see, even though you might look and go, man, how peaceful is my life right now? And mean it with all the sarcasm you can muster. Even though your life doesn't look very peaceful today, you can still have peace in your heart. And his name's Jesus. As we wrap, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got one final prophetic text about Jesus. And I love reading prophetic texts about Jesus because you can't help read it and not go, yeah, it's talking about Jesus. So I'm just going to conclude our time together reading an excerpt from Isaiah 53. And it says this. Who has believed what we have heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of a dry ground. He didn't have an impressive form or majesty that we should look at him, no appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turned away from, and he was despised and we didn't value him. Yet he himself bore our sicknesses, and he carried our pains. But we in turn regarded him stricken, struck down by God and afflicted. But he was pierced because of our rebellion, crushed because of our iniquities, punished for our peace was on him. And we are healed by his wounds. We all went astray like sheep. We all have turned to our own way, and the Lord has punished him for the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to slaughter, and like a sheep silent before her shearers, he did not open his mouth. He was taken away because of oppression and judgment, and who considered his fate? For he was cut off from the land of the living. He was struck because of my people's rebellion. He was assigned a grave with the wicked, But he was with a rich man at his death, because he had done no violence and had not spoken deceitfully. Yet the Lord was pleased to crush him severely. When you make him a guilt offering, he will see his seed. He will prolong his days, and by his hand the Lord's pleasure will be accomplished. After his anguish, he will see light and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will carry their iniquities. Therefore, I will give him the many as a portion, and he will receive the mighty as spoil, because he willingly submitted to death and was counted among the rebels. Yet he bore the sin of many and interceded for the rebels. He is God. He is peace. He is King. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for who you are, for what you've done in our lives, for how you move in the midst of the chaos to bring us wholeness, completeness, and peace. God, thank you for sending peace from heaven to earth in and through the birth of Jesus. May we walk away from this place and into our homes and our families and be those who instill that peace, who are sandaled in the gospel of peace, walking outward and embodying that in every facet of who we are. Be with us in this time. And just as the